Hi, how are you? So, how have you? Actually, the question: how do you defrost your food before cooking? So, good evening. Good evening. Um, I hope you're well. I am well. So, today is World Food Safety Day, and this day is really meant to remind us to be more careful when it comes to handling food. Okay, because 1 in every 10 people will actually have a foodborne disease every single year. Okay, and a foodborne disease really means you ate contaminated food. There's really no any other explanation to that. So that's why it's very, very important that we remind ourselves on how to handle food, and that's why we are having this video. Okay, so we should remember that in this world there are so many microorganisms. Okay, I mean, our skin is covered by microorganisms, our gut has microorganisms, our nose, our mouth, private parts, especially for girls, they do have microorganisms. Okay, and we can't see them, we can't smell them, but they are there. Okay, now those are the good ones, and then we have the ones that cause decay, like when something falls on the ground, it gets rotten. They're part of the ecosystem. But we also have the other group that cause disease. We call them the pathogenic ones. Okay, now those are the ones that we really, really try to avoid. Okay, and most of the pathogenic bacteria or microorganisms, they usually prefer the warm, liquidy environment. Okay, so whenever you have this warm environment, like you see the tropics of bacteria, they are more likely to really, really multiply fast. That's why you always say if you want to store food, it should either be very hot or very cold. Don't avoid these in between temperatures. Very hot, you see at least temperatures of 60 and above, and cold means temperatures of 5 degrees or less. Okay, it's very important that you remember that. And then so when you're handling food, just remember that, cleanliness is everything. Sorry, I think my internet is misbehaving. Yeah, so when handling food, sorry about that, my internet is misbehaving. When handling food, just remember that the internet, cleanliness is everything. So the first thing is you need to be very, very clean. Okay, that means your hands have to be washed with soap and clean water. Okay, and you remember you wash your hands before you, sorry, my internet, remember you wash your hands before you eat, before you touch food, sorry, after you've touched food, after going to the toilet, and after going to the toilet. Okay, those are the points that you need to wash your hands. Or if you have pets in the house, also after touching a pet, after touching a pet, please wash your hands. Okay, also you should remember after washing your hands, all surfaces have to be clean. As long as you're going to, those surfaces are places where food is going to get access to. So surfaces of the kitchen, surfaces of the dining room, they all have to be clean. All utensils have to be clean at all time. And then whether or not you should use paper towel or cloth towel, if you can afford a paper towels, they are better because then they have risks of cross contamination. But you can do still cloth towels, but just remember when you're doing cloth towels, you have to make sure that they are changed every single day, and if possible they are able to be soaked in hot water or in a disinfectant after every use. Okay, all fruits and vegetables also have to be washed, especially if you're thinking of salad. When you're thinking of vegetables that have to be eaten raw, like for example you're having salads, they have to be washed with warm water. Okay, and all fruits, the skin of fruits also has to be washed. And if you're having canned foods or juices or boxed juices, remember also those have to be washed. Okay, so the first key to make sure that you're safe is cleanliness, and that it means hand washing, surface washing, and food washing. Then the second thing is separation. So you see, when you're going to shop, like when you enter, for example, you're entering supermarket and you need to buy, say you're buying beef, you're buying poultry, that's chicken, you're buying eggs, you're buying fish, and then you're also buying milk, you're buying bread, and maybe some other snacks and all that. You see, usually you have this one big cart and you'll see most people just piling up everything in there. So that's really discouraged. We discourage you mixing raw food and cooked food. Okay, we really discourage that. So if you know you're going to get raw food, you can carry an extra basket for the raw food. Okay, alternatively is you go shop everything in the supermarket, like all the dry foods, okay, and all the cooked foods. You shop once you're done, then you go get the raw food. Now, as in you finish with your meat and all those things section. Okay, so you start with everything else except the section. So by the time you're done with the section, you go to the teller, and even during the packing, the raw food should always be separated from the cooked food. And when you also get at home, in your fridge or in your freezer, try to find a way where you don't mix the raw and cooked food. So in your fridge, it's nice to have a place where you're going to put like milk, you're going to put bread, and where you're going to put your meat, you're going to put your eggs. It's nice not to mix everything, because raw food is more likely to have microbes, because as we said, the microbes like the wetty, warm environment, in that they really multiply fast. So for you to be able to make sure that you don't get that, at any point in time, do not mix the raw and the cooked food. Okay, if you're in the kitchen and the surfaces, for example, you are using a cutting board, make sure that after using it, maybe you're cutting meat on the cutting board, wash it before you put on top, or before you put on it anything else. Okay, if you are using a plate, make sure that if, let's say, you had put some raw meat on that plate, please wash that plate before you put anything else. Like, the key thing is raw food should not be mixed with cooked food at any point in time, from the supermarket to your grocery bags to the kitchen at home, and even after, when you're preparing food, at any point in time. Okay, then the third bit is on storage. Usually we say you store food in very low temperatures. Okay, we say you chill them. You can put it in the fridge or you can put it in the freezer. Okay, now what you need to remember is after let's say you've come from shopping, you should not have spent more than 2 hours with this food. For example, if you've bought beef, don't stay with beef for more than 2 hours before refrigerating it, or before freezing it, or before boiling it. Okay, because then you're more likely to have issues of contamination and bacteria getting the time to multiply, and that beef or whatever turning bad. Okay, and even cause disease. Okay, you should keep that in mind. And once you have refrigerated the food, how do you defrost? So defrosting should happen in the fridge. So for example, if you want to defrost a frozen meat, you put it in the fridge, don't put it on the surface, or you put it in cold water. Okay, or you use a microwave. Okay, you can opt to defrost with a microwave if you want, but don't put it on the surface. And the reason is purely the same: you do not want the food to be contaminated. It's very important. And then let's say, for example, you're marinating food, you've already marinated, you've put your spices, you've used your hands and all that. The process, as you wait for it, take it to the fridge. Okay, so the idea is food should not be left on the surfaces if it's just in the room temperature. That's what we're saying. Okay, if it's just in the room temperature, it's more likely to go bad, and it's more likely to get contaminated. Then the fourth thing is the cooking. So food has to be cooked thoroughly. I know there are people who like their beefs maybe not well done, but usually the recommended is it has to be well done. And the reason is because sometimes you don't know what was happening to this cow, or to this pork, or to the eggs, to the chicken. And what usually happens is you are more likely to get the disease just in case this pork or this cow was sick, or the chicken. We've seen people who got typhoid from chicken. Okay, so it's very, very important to keep that in mind, that food has to be cooked thoroughly at all points in time. Okay, and food also has to be consumed while it's hot. Okay, and usually we say within 1 hour after cooking. So if you've cooked something, you don't leave it there. And that's why even for children, you always say a child should only use 1 hour for eating, because then you're more likely to have all these complications that may come from the child having contaminated food. Okay, it's very important to keep that in mind. And then when you're warming food, let's say you're doing soups or sauces and you're warming food, they have to boil. Okay, so if you're warming food, maybe it's a little leftover from the day before, please bring it to boil. It has to be boiled thoroughly. Okay, and if it's any other type of food and you have to warm it, you can use a microwave. If you're using a microwave, and this microwave, most microwaves usually come with a rotating table, and some don't, depending on the technology. So the key thing is, when you're putting the food in the microwave, always remember to cover it. Okay, and once you've covered it, once you've put in the microwave, for example, you've set 1 minute, remove it, mix it or something, so that at the end of the day all the food is mixed. And you see the way the microwave acts on the water particles, so that the heat is evenly distributed in that food, and then you rewarm it again. If your microwave has the rotating table, then that's okay, because it usually rotates in the microwave. Okay, and then if it's an egg, the egg yolk has to be firm. Okay, so what have I said? What I've said is the food has to be cooked thoroughly, and then what you need to remember is the food has to be handled clean. Okay, and then the fifth thing, is remember to always use safe water. Okay, at any point in time, whether you're washing your hands, whether you're drinking water, whether you're washing your fruits, or whether you're washing the utensils, the food the water has to be safe at all points in time. Okay, because you don't want to use contaminated water, because at the end of the day, really, you're making the situation worse. So I really hope I've been able to be of help to you. In summary, when you're handling food, remember cleanliness takes the day. Wash your hands, wash the surfaces, and wash the food that you're going to eat. Okay, and then the second thing is separate the raw and cooked foods, okay, from the supermarket to your shopping cart, to your grocery bags, to your refrigerators, to the time of preparation. Do not mix raw and cooked food. Okay, and then the third thing is cook thoroughly. The food has to be cooked thoroughly at all time. Okay, and once you've cooked thoroughly, remember to eat the food within 1 hour after eating it. And when you're warming food, remember to warm the food to bring to boil, especially if you're dealing with soups and sauces. Okay, then the fourth thing is chill. Remember, food is stored by refrigeration or by freezing. Okay, anything less than 5 degrees centigrade is usually acceptable, and the food has to be stored there, and it should not be stored for a very long time, because sometimes it loses all the nutrients and all the flavor in the food. And then the fifth thing is use of safe water at all point in time. Remember, the water has to be safe, and also the raw materials that you are using to make food also have to be safe. Okay, Yeah, so Musembi, you are saying, does thoroughly cooked food not kill the nutrients? Well, it does, but it depends on the type of food that you. For example, if you're doing salads, those are the vegetables. You don't need to cook vegetables if you want to take salads, and I think that's what you're referring to. So if you're doing salads, you can take salads, but when you're washing the salads, you have to wash with warm water. Okay, clean warm water, and the washing has to be thoroughly. So you go to the first point, the cleanliness. You clean the food and you clean it thoroughly. So if you're doing salads, you don't need to cook it. But if you're doing beef, yes, that has to be cooked thoroughly. If you're doing pork, it has to be cooked thoroughly. If you're doing eggs, it has to be cooked thoroughly. Okay, and usually the protein is usually not denatured by heat. Okay, I hope I've answered your question. Melbourne Venture, thank you. You're saying it's great. Thank you, and it's nice so much for you guys to take time to watch this. I really hope I've been of help, and I'll be able to save you from having a foodborne disease this year. Okay? Yeah, it's always a pleasure, and have yourselves a good night. Bye-bye.